Have you ever wondered why prices keep going up? Why your paycheck somehow buys less every year? Or why the news keeps using words like recession and rate hike as if you're supposed to already know what they mean? That's macroeconomics. And here's the thing. You don't need a degree to understand it. You just need someone to connect the dots. In the next 11 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the entire economy. Every major force, every term you keep hearing, and exactly how each one reaches into your wallet. By the end, the news will stop feeling like a foreign language. Let's start with the most basic question. What even is macroeconomics? Microeconomics is the study of one person, one business, one price. Why did your neighbor buy a Honda instead of a Toyota? Why did the coffee shop raise the price of a latte? That's micro. Macroeconomics zooms out. It studies the whole highway, not one driver. And here's why that matters. What's good for one person can be disastrous for everyone at once. If you decide to save every dollar you earn, that's responsible. Smart. The textbook says you should. But if every household in the country decides to save every dollar at the same time, no one spends, businesses lose revenue, layoffs follow, and the economy collapses. Economists call this the paradox of thrift. Your responsible choice, multiplied across 130 million households, becomes a recession. That's the whole point of macroeconomics. It studies what happens when individual decisions collide on a national scale. Now, how does all that money actually move around? This is called the circular flow, and it's simpler than it sounds. Think of the economy like the plumbing of a house. Money is water. Households send labor to firms. Firms send wages back to households. Households take those wages and spend them at other firms, which pays other workers. The money never disappears. It just keeps moving. Then add 3 more players. The government taxes some of that water and spends it on roads, schools, and defense. Banks catch the savings that leak out and loan them back in as investment. And foreign countries buy some of the water as exports or sell us some of theirs as imports. Here's the part most people miss. One person's spending is always another person's income. Every dollar you spend at a grocery store becomes someone else's paycheck. Every dollar that paycheck spends becomes the next person's income. This is why economies feel contagious. When one sector slows down, it drains the whole system. And when one sector roars, it lifts everything around it. Okay, now inflation. The word everyone uses and almost nobody defines correctly. Inflation is not prices are high. Inflation is prices rising over time. Those are different things. Eggs costing $6 is a price level. Eggs costing $6 this year after costing $5 last year is inflation. There are 4 ways inflation shows up, and each one works differently. The first is demand pull. Too much money chasing too few goods. The economy is hot. People have jobs. Credit is cheap. Everyone wants to buy, and there isn't enough supply to go around. Prices rise. The second is cost push. Something on the supply side breaks. A war shuts down an oil field. A drought kills a grain harvest. A pandemic closes the factories. Production gets more expensive, and businesses raise prices to survive. The third is monetary. Central banks create too much money too fast without the economy producing more goods to match. Each dollar becomes worth a little less because there are more of them chasing the same stuff. The fourth is expectations, and this one is sneaky. It's psychological. If workers believe prices are going to rise next year, they demand bigger raises now. If businesses believe their costs are going to rise, they raise their prices preemptively. The belief creates the reality. Once inflation expectations get loose, they're brutal to pull back. Here's the current picture. As of March 2026, U.S. headline inflation sits at 3.3%. Core inflation, which strips out volatile food and energy, is at 2.6%. That headline number jumped because gasoline prices surged more than 21% in a single month after new geopolitical supply shocks. classic cost push, which leads to measurement. You've probably heard of the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. It's a giant monthly receipt the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks across a standardized basket of goods the average household buys. Food, rent, gas, clothes, healthcare, everything. But here's where official inflation stops matching your experience. The CPI is an average. You are not an average. If most of your income goes to rent, gas, and groceries, and those three are spiking, your personal inflation rate is way higher than the official number. Meanwhile, the CPI gets pulled down by things you rarely buy. In March 2026, used car prices actually fell 3.2%. Great if you happen to be shopping for a used car. Useless if you are just trying to afford dinner. This is why the government can announce inflation is cooling while you feel poorer every month. It's not a conspiracy. It's just that a national average can't capture your specific life. Your grocery bill is your real inflation rate. The CPI is a weather report for a country you don't actually live in. Now, why does any of this matter beyond math? Because of something called purchasing power. Purchasing power is what your money actually buys, not the number on the bill, the groceries in the cart. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If inflation is running at 3.3% and your savings account earns 0, you are not keeping your money safe. You're losing about 3.3% of its real value every year. $10,000 in a safe today buys roughly $9,670 worth of stuff a year from now. Do that for a decade, and you've quietly lost thousands without anyone ever stealing anything. This is why investing isn't just aggressive, it's defensive. It's not about getting rich. It's about refusing to let inflation silently drain you. Now let's talk about who's actually steering this whole ship. Two players, the government, which runs fiscal policy, and the central bank, which runs monetary policy. They are completely different tools, and confusing them is one of the most common mistakes in economic news. Fiscal policy is the government's taxing and spending. When the economy is slow, the government spends more and taxes less, pumping cash into the system. That's called expansionary fiscal policy. When the economy overheats, they're supposed to tax more and spend less to cool things down. That's contractionary. In theory. In practice, it almost never happens because no politician has ever won an election by raising taxes. The result is the national debt. As of late 2025, U.S. public debt sits at about 122% of GDP. Put another way, the country owes more than everything it produces in a full year. And in March 2026, just the interest payments on that debt hit $623 billion. That's 17% of everything the federal government spends. Before a single road gets built or a single soldier gets paid, 17 cents of every federal dollar goes to paying interest. Here's the nuance. National debt isn't automatically bad. A country can carry huge debt if the economy grows faster than the interest rate on the debt. Debt only becomes dangerous when the interest payments grow faster than the economy can keep up. That's when the trap closes, and every option left is painful. Monetary policy is different. The central bank, which in the US is the Federal Reserve, doesn't tax or spend. It controls the price of money itself, the interest rate. Think of the Fed as the bank of the banks. When the Fed raises its key rate, every commercial bank passes that increase to you. Your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card. All more expensive. This slows spending, cools demand, and brings inflation down. When the Fed cuts rates, borrowing gets cheap. People buy houses and cars. Businesses expand, and the economy heats up. Right now, April 2026, the Fed is holding its target range at 3.50 to 3.75%. They've been fighting to pull inflation back to their 2% target without crashing the job market. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the European Central Bank is holding at 2.00% because they're dealing with a slower economy and less inflation pressure. Here's what most people don't realize. The Fed doesn't just move mortgages and credit cards. It moves every asset class. When rates are low, stocks and real estate soar because bonds pay nothing, and investors need returns somewhere. When rates are high, bonds get attractive again, and stocks usually cool off. Every time you see markets go haywire after a Fed announcement, this is why. One press conference in Washington is quietly repricing everything you own. Now, money doesn't stop at borders. Let's talk exchange rates. An exchange rate is just the price of one country's money measured in another country's money. If $1 buys 90 euro cents today and 80 euro cents tomorrow, the dollar has weakened. Your imported electronics get more expensive. Your European vacation gets more expensive. But American exports get cheaper for foreign buyers, which can help US manufacturers. Most major currencies float. The value is set by supply and demand. Investors want currencies from stable, high-interest countries. They flee currencies from unstable, low-growth ones. Look at Lebanon, where the currency has collapsed from around 1,500 Lebanese pounds per dollar before the crisis to roughly 89,500 pounds per dollar by 2025, with inflation running at 14%. That's what happens when international confidence disappears. A currency isn't just money. It's a report card the world grades in real time. A strong currency isn't automatically good either. Yes, you can buy cheaper imports, but your country's exports become unaffordable to foreigners, which punishes your factories. Every country is walking a tightrope between those two outcomes. Now the big one, GDP. GDP, gross domestic product, is the total dollar value of everything a country produces in a year. Every car, every haircut, every software subscription. It's the economic scoreboard. Two versions matter. Nominal GDP measures output at today's prices. Real GDP strips out inflation to show actual growth. If nominal GDP grows 5%, but inflation is 3%, real growth is only 2%. Real GDP is what tells you the economy is actually expanding and not just inflating. In the fourth quarter of 2025, US real GDP grew at just 0.5% annualized. Technically positive. Barely. That's a serious slowdown from the previous year, and it's one of the reasons economists are nervous right now. But here's the trap. GDP is not quality of life. GDP counts activity, not well-being. An earthquake increases GDP because rebuilding costs money. A hurricane increases GDP because construction booms. The US has the largest economy in the world and still ranks 20th in the Good Life Index, behind countries like Denmark and Norway with a fraction of our output. GDP measures how much the economy produces. It says nothing about who gets the results. $1 million of healthcare spending and $1 million of junk food look identical in the number. Which brings us to the final piece. The business cycle. Economies don't grow in a straight line. They move in cycles. Expansion, peak, recession, trough, recovery. Over and over. Expansion feels like summer. Jobs everywhere, raises flowing, confidence high. Peak is the overheated moment right before something breaks. Recession is winter. Hiring freezes, layoffs, shrinking budgets. Trough is the bottom. And recovery is spring, when the survivors start growing again. Here's what's strange about right now. Unemployment has been drifting up for 33 straight months to 4.3%. Historically, that's a recession signal. But real GDP is still positive. So we're in this weird in-between where the economy is clearly slowing but hasn't technically contracted. Economists are split on whether this is a successful soft landing or the beginning of a slow-motion downturn. Nobody actually knows which one we're in until long after we finished it. And this is where macro stops being theoretical and starts being personal. Because the cycle always turns. Always. The question isn't whether it turns. The question is whether you're prepared when it does. So here's what all of this means for you. When the Fed raises rates, your next car loan costs more. When inflation outpaces your raise, you've just taken a pay cut you didn't sign up for. When GDP shrinks, hiring freezes, and your job security shrinks with it. When the currency weakens, your grocery bill goes up because half of what's in your cart was imported from somewhere. When the government runs unsustainable deficits, the bill eventually comes due as higher taxes, cuts to services, or more inflation quietly eating your savings. You can't control any of these forces. Nobody can. But you can stop being surprised by them. That's the whole point of understanding macro. Not to predict the future, to recognize the weather. Because the news doesn't really explain the economy. It reports fragments. Rate hike here, GDP print there, currency wobble somewhere else, and it expects you to stitch it together. Now you can. You know how the pieces connect. You know why the Fed matters. You know why the CPI feels wrong. You know why saving cash in an inflationary environment is quietly losing. You know why GDP is not the same as wealth. And you know why the cycle always turns. If the news keeps feeling confusing, it's usually because the forecasters are describing summer while you're already feeling winter. You now have the map. You can read it for yourself. And that's really the whole trick. The economy isn't mysterious. It's just big. Understand the forces, watch how they move, and you stop being a passenger. You become someone who can actually see the road.